Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So in this explainer, we're going to tackle a term that I think gets really oversimplified, especially in our field, digital literacy. We're going to move way beyond just, knowing how to use an operating system or a browser. We're going to treat it as what it really is, an evolving human competency. Think of it like a crucial OS for the mind, something absolutely essential for anyone building, creating, or even just existing in this digital world that we are all actively shaping. You see, it's not just about using the tools. It's about understanding the systems, the architectures, and the ethical frameworks that hold it all together.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by breaking down the current information landscape, that absolute fire hose of data we're all trying to drink from. Then, we'll get into the critical thinking skills you need to actually make sense of it all. From there, we'll pivot from just consuming information to actively creating it, looking at what's in the modern digital toolkit. We'll touch on some foundational skills, then dive deep into the ethics of being a digital citizen. And we'll wrap it all up with the one meta skill that rules them all, how to constantly adapt in a field where the only constant is change.
All right, so let's kick things off. Our journey really starts with this massive paradigm shift in how we relate to data. We've gone from a world of information scarcity to one of just overwhelming, unfiltered abundance. And this isn't just about having more stuff. The fundamental nature of information has changed, and that has completely rewired the demands on all of us.
So this shift brings us to a really critical question, one that pretty much frames our entire conversation today. How has the basic challenge of just finding information actually changed? I mean, this is step one, because the whole concept of finding something has been turned completely on its head.
Think about it. For pretty much all of human history, information was a gated resource. It was curated by publishers, librarians, academics. The big problem was just getting your hands on it. Today, the problem is completely inverted. We've gone from a pull model, where we had to go seek out information, to a push model, where this unfiltered torrent of data is just constantly aimed right at us. The challenge isn't access anymore, it's signal detection. It's about finding that high-quality signal in an ocean of noise. We used to talk about finding a needle in a haystack. Now, it's like trying to find the right needle in a mountain of other needles.
So to actually navigate this, we have to get way beyond just typing a few words into a search bar. It means learning to speak the language of search algorithms. I mean, sure, Boolean operators, your classic and or not, they're the foundation. But real fluency is about knowing how to use explicit commands. For example, using something as simple as cite to narrow your search to a specific domain, like a trusted news source or an academic site, is a super powerful way to pre-filter your results. More advanced stuff? You can use operators like around X to find words near each other, or file type to hunt for specific documents. And this is crucial. You absolutely have to understand the architecture of the results page, knowing instantly which results are paid ads and which are the actual organic results ranked by these incredibly complex AI-driven algorithms.
Okay, but even if you master search syntax, that's only half the battle. Because the results you get back, they aren't some objective truth. They're personalized for you. And that creates this systemic vulnerability in our whole information ecosystem, which brings us to a concept that is absolutely critical for anyone in tech to understand: the filter bubble.
This term was coined by Eli Pariser, and it describes this algorithmic isolation we all live in. See, search platforms and social media, they build this incredibly detailed profile of you based on everything you do. Every click, how long you pause on a video, your location, your search history. Then they use that profile to curate a feed of content that their algorithm predicts will keep you engaged the longest. The result is that each of us is living in our own bespoke information universe, one that's been quietly edited just for us, without us ever really opting in.
And the direct result of that personalized universe is, of course, the echo chamber. The algorithm's job is to maximize engagement. So it learns your biases, it learns your preferences, and it starts to systematically hide or downrank anything that contradicts what you already believe. Over time, this creates this dangerous feedback loop that just reinforces your own beliefs, making it seem like everyone agrees with you. A huge part of being digitally literate today is just knowing this system exists and then actively taking steps to pop that bubble. Using privacy-focused search engines, clearing your history, or even going old school with RSS feeds to build your own diverse set of sources.
So understanding these big systemic issues brings us right to our next topic. If this modern information landscape is basically a minefield of bias and manipulation, then critical thinking is our #1 defense mechanism. It's our shield. And this isn't some soft skill, it is a core operational requirement for navigating the world today. Before we can build up our defenses, though, we have to understand the threats. And a key piece of that
is making a really important distinction between two words that get thrown around all the time, often incorrectly. So what is the actual difference between misinformation and disinformation?
It really all boils down to one thing: intent. Misinformation is just inaccurate. It's a mistake. It's someone sharing an old article thinking it's new or misreading some data. There's no malice behind it. Disinformation, on the other hand, is deliberately fake. It is created with the specific goal of deceiving people and causing harm. This is your classic fake news, often amplified by botnets, designed to manipulate people. Knowing which one you're up against is the first step to figuring out how to deal with it.
Okay, so knowing the types of threats is one thing, but how do you spot them in the wild? Well, this brings us to a really powerful technique for evaluating sources. And honestly, it's the total opposite of how most of us were taught to do research. So what is this thing called lateral reading?
This is fascinating. Research out of Stanford found a huge difference in how regular people and professional fact-checkers check out a website. Most of us read vertically. We land on a site and we stay there, clicking the About Us page to see if they seem trustworthy. The pros? They do the opposite. They read laterally. The very first thing a fact-checker does when they hit an unfamiliar source is they leave. They open new tabs and start investigating the source itself. They're not focused on the story, they're investigating the storyteller. It's like you wouldn't just install a random library in your project without checking its dependencies and known vulnerabilities first, right? It's the exact same idea.
Now, so much of our information is visual, and images are a huge vector for bad information because it's so easy to strip them of their original context. So this leads to a really practical question. What's a basic technique anyone can use to check where an image actually came from?
Your absolute best friend here is the reverse image search. It's built into every major search engine, and it uses computer vision to basically create a unique mathematical fingerprint of an image. It then scans this massive database of images from all over the web to find matches.
And with that one simple search, you can often find out exactly where that photo first appeared online. You can trace it back to its original source, its original date, and its original context. It's the fastest way to spot when, say, an old photo from one event is being used to mislead people about a totally different event happening now. Now, it's not a silver bullet, especially against really sophisticated deepfakes, but for debunking decontextualized images, it's an absolutely essential tool in the toolkit.
So far, we've mostly been on the defense, right? Evaluating, filtering, and verifying information. But true digital literacy isn't just about consumption. It's also about production. This brings us to our third section, making that shift from being a passive consumer to an active prosumer.
So this really forces us to challenge that old-school view of literacy as just a receptive skill, like reading a book. So we have to ask, how does digital literacy show up as an active, productive skill? What does that even look like? Well, it covers a few key areas. First, there's communication, understanding the unwritten rules, the netiquette for different platforms, whether it's a Slack channel or a code review on GitHub. Second, there's content creation. And this is more than just editing a photo. It's understanding media formats, compression, how content gets delivered. Third, there's computational thinking. You don't have to be a developer, but grasping the basics of logic, like how a simple if-then statement works, helps demystify the automated world around us. And finally, the big new frontier, generative AI, which is a whole new ballgame that requires a new set of skills. And speaking of generative AI, that brings us to what is probably one of the fastest growing and most important new skills in the entire tech landscape. So let's put a pin in it. What exactly is prompt engineering? Okay, so prompt engineering is really the craft of designing the right input to get the output you want from a large language model. It's kind of a mix of art and science. A really good prompt usually has a few key parts. You give the AI a clear role, like act as a senior cybersecurity analyst. You provide detailed context, you set specific constraints, like keep the response under 200 words and output in JSON format, and then you give it a clear task. Mastering this is the key to unlocking the power of these tools. And just as important is the ethics piece. Being transparent when you use AI to generate content, so we don't end up creating a whole new wave of sophisticated disinformation. So we've talked about these high-level cognitive and creative skills, but all of them are sitting on top of a technical foundation. This section is all about clarifying the relationship between those core technical skills and the bigger strategic idea of digital literacy. It's the how-to that sits underneath the why.
This is a really common point of confusion, even for people deep in the tech world. It's so easy to think that if you know how to code, you're automatically digitally literate. But they are not the same thing. So let's be super clear about this. What is the fundamental difference?
I think the best way to understand this is to think about the difference between knowing the syntax of a programming language and understanding good software design principles. Knowing the syntax, the how-to, lets you write code. That's a technical skill. But understanding things like design patterns, security principles, and ethics, the why and the should, that's what lets you build robust, secure, and truly useful applications. That's digital literacy. One is about execution, the other is about judgment and architecture. You need both, but they are not the same.
And that whole architectural and ethical side of things is so important, it gets its own section. This brings us to the responsibilities we all have as members of this global digital community. In other words, what does it actually mean to be a modern digital citizen?
Digital citizenship isn't just one thing. It's really a balance between our own rights and protecting ourselves and our responsibilities to everyone else in the community. To really get it, we need to ask, what are the two core parts of this digital code? So, on the one hand, the defensive side, you've got digital safety. This is more than just good passwords and using multi-factor authentication. It's about understanding your own personal threat model, being able to spot sophisticated attacks like spear phishing, and just actively managing your digital footprint. Then, on the other side, the community side, you have digital ethics. This is about respecting intellectual property, contributing to a healthy online discourse, and actively working to make digital spaces safer and more inclusive for other people. It's really the combination of self-preservation and community responsibility. But look, you can't be an effective digital citizen if you don't understand the economic engine driving the environment you're in. And that leads us to a really critical concept that defines the business model for a huge chunk of the modern web. What is surveillance capitalism? This term, which was coined by Shoshana Zuboff, describes the web's dominant business model. Here's how it works. Companies offer you a service for free, but in exchange, they collect massive amounts of your behavioral data. Not just what you click, but how long you look at something, where you are, who you talk to. That data is the raw material used to build predictive models of your behavior. That model is the actual product that gets sold to advertisers. The core idea is simple. If the service is free, you aren't the customer. You are the product. And understanding that fundamental trade-off is absolutely necessary if you want to make informed choices about your own privacy. This brings us to our final and maybe our most important section. Every single skill and framework we have talked about so far exists inside an ecosystem that is defined by relentless exponential change. So the ultimate skill isn't mastering how things are right now, but mastering the art of adaptation itself. So if we had to boil all of this down to one core capability, the one skill that makes all the others possible, what would that be? What is the single most important meta skill for any person trying to be digitally literate today? Just look at this timeline. It shows this dramatic, and I mean dramatic, acceleration in how quickly we adopt new technologies. It took the telephone 75 years to reach mass adoption. The web did it in 7 years. The smartphone, 4 years. And then a transformative AI like ChatGPT got to 100 million users in 2 months. This insane compression of the adoption cycle means that static knowledge goes obsolete almost overnight. So digital literacy can't be a destination. It has to be a process of constant, continuous learning. And the psychological framework for this is what the psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. It's the core belief that your abilities aren't fixed, they can be developed. For anyone in tech, this is, well, it's just how we operate. No one expects to know every new JavaScript framework that pops up. Instead, we have this built-in confidence that we can figure it out. We can read the docs, watch a tutorial, and get it done. We have to apply that exact same mindset to every part of our digital lives. Okay, so we have traveled all the way through the information landscape. We've built a toolkit for critical thinking. We've looked at our roles as creators and citizens, and we've landed on this absolute need for adaptation. So let's try to pull this all together into one core idea. This quote just nails it. The goal isn't to be a technical expert on every single new gadget or platform. That's impossible. The real goal is to sharpen our timeless human skills, critical thinking, clear communication, ethical judgment, and mental flexibility, and just get really good at applying them in a world that happens to be run on technology. The tech is just the medium. It's not the message. So, to wrap up, here's a simple compass to help you out. First, always question the source. Make lateral reading your default. Second, understand the platform's motive. Know the business model of the tools you use. Third, be a responsible creator, not just a passive consumer. Fourth, protect yourself and respect others. And finally, and this is the most important one, commit to lifelong learning. Embrace that growth mindset. At the end of the day, digital literacy is all about making sure that as our tools get exponentially more powerful, our wisdom and our humanity keep pace. We really hope this framework has been valuable for you. For more explainers on technology and AI, please subscribe to our channel, Tech, AI, and Beyond. Thank you for joining us.